Hello everyone, so did you know that self-sabotage is most likely the main reason why people stop learning languages or don't even start to begin with? And why am I talking about self-sabotage? Well, by self-sabotage, what I mean is a lot of people, if not all people, will have limiting beliefs. To give you some examples, and maybe you might be able to relate to some of them, a limiting belief is things like, I cannot learn grammar, it's too hard, I do not have time to learn languages, or I don't have any motivation, or I'm not motivated. Well, in this video, I would like to address these three beliefs and try to debunk them. But to start with, why do we have limiting beliefs? Well, it's a little bit complicated, but to simplify it, a limiting belief starts, I would say, when you are in a negative situation or a situation which has a negative emotional impact. So it doesn't have to be anything extreme. Imagine someone that finds language learning too hard. I imagine what they experienced is that they started learning a language and then they just felt like it was hard. So they felt, difficulty, struggle, frustration, whatever. And because they felt bad about it, the reflex that their brain had was to find an excuse and say it's too hard for you, so you can't do it. And that's a cop-out, essentially. That's a way for you to not engage in doing that activity because it made you feel emotionally uncomfortable. And what's interesting about limiting beliefs is that they're very hard to notice, like it's hard to know when you have them, and it takes quite a lot of being open to the idea of limiting beliefs for you to work on these beliefs. And the thing about our brains is that we have a negative bias, which means that whenever you believe something, so for example, I don't have time, then you'll try to find all the evidence to support that claim because your brain wants to convince you, in a way, to not do this activity. So anything will be a good reason for you to not do language learning. So if you don't have time, you'll think, I've got kids, I've got a full-time job, I've got this and this to do after work, I'm too tired, so when I take a nap, I don't have time, and anything like that. And maybe if you're new to this concept of limiting beliefs, maybe your ego will sort of try to puff up and try to fight back and being like, well, how can you say that to me? You don't know my life, you don't know how busy I am, etc, etc, etc. But that's just your brain resorting to your negative bias and trying to keep you to that comfortable place where you just think that you can't do language learning, for example. I just wanted to clarify what I meant by comfort zone. Essentially, comfort zone refers to a situation where you feel emotionally comfortable, as opposed to a situation which would create emotional discomfort with emotions such as frustration, boredom, or feeling challenged. So here, it'd be more comfortable to not do language learning and blame it on time, rather than actually making the effort of creating time. But don't worry, it's all normal. I've got my own limiting beliefs. I do sometimes think that I don't have time, but it's only after I think about it that I realize that I do have time. So let's talk a bit about time then. So I did make a video about how to find time to do language learning. I will link it in the description box below. But essentially what changed my mind about I don't have time is that time is not something that you have, it's something that you make or create. The thing is, we only have 24 hours in every day. That's a fact, right? And we are the only ones who can decide, who have real power over what we do during that day. So what it comes down to is how you prioritize the things that you do in that said day. And there's a lot of strategies you can try to sort of maximize your time. For example, you can try, if you've never sort of tried to work on, time management, you can try to keep track of everything you do. So literally have a piece of paper and try as much as possible to keep track of what you're doing at what time. And then, and be very specific, anything, when you're eating, how long you take to cook, how long you take to do a task, a project, work, whatever, and try to keep track of it. And then based on that, you can try to see how you can maybe try to do some tasks more quickly, how maybe you can not do certain tasks. Maybe there's a way for you to, I don't know, it can be anything. Find someone to do it for you, pay someone to do it if you have the money. There's many solutions. I'm not going to detail them in this video, but I'm just trying to give you a rough idea. You can also try to use Pomodoro Technique, and this is something that I've heard, that really learned about from Tokini Andy's channel. Again, I will link the video below. And it's a nice way to motivate you, to sort of push you to be focused on the task. And I'm talking about being focused on a task because sometimes when we do a task without time constraints, we tend to take more time to do it. But with this technique, you sort of have to divide the way you work by short amounts of time with breaks in between, and that means that because they're so short, you can really get into the task and do it quick or as quickly as possible because you're fully focused, and that gives you a time limit, so it kind of gives you a bit of pressure, not like a stressful pressure, but it gives a pressure for you to challenge yourself to do this task as quickly as possible. Another thing that I've tried to do as well is to schedule my day. So this is very flexible. It can be very strict. You can be like, what time you wake up, what time you're gonna have breakfast, what time you're gonna do X and Y, Z task, or you can just schedule parts of your day. So let's say you work from 9 till 5, then you can decide to schedule what you're gonna do from 6 till 9 p.m. for example, scheduled by the minute, and have like that specific time frame where you specifically decide in advance what you're going to do to maximize the free time you have. But I recommend to just try different strategies. So try to do, for example, only part of your day. If you feel like it's not enough or you still don't have time, then try to schedule the entire day. And then if it's too strict, then narrow it down and kind of play around with it and find out what works better for you. So yeah, so these are just some things that I recommend you try if you're kind of new to time management. So the second belief I wanted to talk about is learning grammar is too hard. So in this statement, you kind of have a defeatist attitude, which is interesting and important to notice. But I'd like to sort of counterbalance this argument, if I may say, by saying that, first of all, just because something is hard doesn't mean that you can't do it. In fact, I'm sure in your life you've done many things that were very difficult. In my example, it was studying. I did 6 years of university, and it's not easy. It's long. It takes a lot of studying, a lot of your time. But it's still something that I did, and I think I did well. Also, working is hard. It's difficult. You have to wake up, you have to find the motivation and do the tasks that you have to do, and there's many other things. So what I'm trying to say is that even if something is hard, it's not a reason for you to give up on doing that thing, because you've proved yourself in many ways throughout your life that you could do difficult things. Yeah, I think that's quite an interesting thing to think about. I think that really makes me motivated when I think of it like that. Another thing you can think about is that yes, it is difficult, maybe, but it's rewarding. There's nothing, in my opinion, there's nothing more rewarding than doing something difficult because you've done it and you're like, yes, I really, challenged myself. I stretched myself and it was worth it because it's something I'm happy I've done. And try to be solution-oriented as well. That's my approach to virtually everything in my life. Whenever I struggle with something, I try to see how I can make it better. I think there's always a way to make something even a little bit easier. So maybe it depends on your situation. I'm going to try to be a bit general, but if you find grammar difficult, maybe you have the wrong approach. Maybe there's resources you can look for online. Maybe what you need is a teacher to help you explain a specific grammar point. You don't have to have a teacher for 15,000 lessons. Just 1 or 2 can be enough to sort of lift, if I may say, this difficulty. It might be that finding the right YouTube channel for that particular problem is what you need, and so on and so forth. So instead of getting stuck with it's difficult situation, try to see what you can actually do, because we don't always realize it, but we actually have a lot of power over what we can do and not do in our lives. And finally, demotivation. So often people will tell me on Twitter or on YouTube, I'm not motivated. And for sure, that's something I struggle with every single day. But the things that I've learned about motivation is a few things. So motivation is a bit linked to willpower. So yeah, you know, if you have willpower, then you're motivated to do something. So I'm going to use them interchangeably for the purpose of this video. But when you don't have willpower, it sometimes feels like it's too hard, you just can't do it. But something that I've realized is that you can do something even if you're not motivated. Again, think of all these times you had to go to school, go to work, and you were not motivated, but guess what? You did it and you were fine. I mean, hopefully, but usually people survive when they do something while they're not motivated. So that's one thing. Just because you're not motivated doesn't mean you can't or shouldn't do something. And then when you really feel that resistance, you know, you really feel like you would be fighting against yourself, know that willpower, motivation, is like a muscle. It's something you practice. You're not going to get good at, you know, doing things, you know, in a motivated way straight away. Motivation is actually something that you have to sort of maybe tame in a way, but really sort of practice. You know, for example, when you don't feel motivated, try to do 10 minutes of whatever thing you need to do. In that case, language learning, for example. Then do it. First of all, see how actually you're able to do it if you really try. It does take a lot of motivation and willpower to fight demotivation, but try and you'll see that actually you can do it. And then the following days, try to do 15 minutes for a few days, then 20, then 25, and then you'll see that eventually you will build up motivation to do it. And even if you're not fully motivated, you will still be able to do some of this activity anyway. The last sort of tip about motivation is that you need to accept discomfort. I think, and that's based on what I observe in myself, when I feel demotivated, the only thing that's keeping me from doing something is an emotion, a negative emotion. But I think what's important is to get used to negative emotions. They're not going to kill you, they are pretty harmless. You know, it's not actually a situation which threatens your life. So just accept that it's only a bit uncomfortable, it's going to feel a bit crap, but it's okay, and we all feel like that. And I don't think that productive people always feel motivated when they do things. They just learn to do things, even if sometimes the motivation might be lacking a bit. So that's it for this video. I hope you found value in it. I think all of these limiting beliefs are incredible, and it's quite interesting how with a bit of thought management, I'm going to call it, you can actually overcome them. It takes practice, so don't give up. Even if one day you find applying any of the things I've talked about in this video difficult, don't give up, try again, and eventually you will get there, I'm sure. And I will see you next week, and bye.